Hi, and welcome to the Handbag Designer 101 podcast with your host, Emily Blumenthal, handbag designer expert and handbag fairy godmother, where we cover everything about handbags from making, marketing, designing, and talking to handbag designers and industry experts about what it takes to make a successful handbag. Hello, Hirra Babar from 𝐷. Thank you so much for being part of the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. So excited to have you today.
Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for having me. I'm also very excited to have this chat with you. We were having this conversation before this. I've been looking forward to this.
I know. How many years do you think we've been connected? Because what year did you start your handbag brand? 2014?
It was I started my entrepreneurial journey with everything around bags around 2015. But 𝐷 officially came into being in 2016, 17.
Yeah. Because I was looking back and I found an email from you from 2014 because I have over 500,000 emails in my inbox and I don't delete them, which is a problem for some people. You could call me an email hoarder. I just don't have the bandwidth. I got to hire an intern to go through my emails and delete them or something. Maybe when my kids.
Yeah, but you never know what you'll find. Like you said that I adopted an email in 2014 and here we are, 6, 7 years, 8 years?
It's a lot of this conversation. I'm not figuring that out. Oh my gosh. So you're in Pakistan right now, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, have you been in Pakistan the entire time you've been doing this?
Yes. So I've been here. This is where I started my brand from. But of course, I do travel for work purposes, just to see what's happening around in the world. And the idea was to make a homegrown label that is everything made in Pakistan that has a worldwide audience. So for that also, I do travel to Europe and US, just putting my brand out there.
So going back to 2014, you came up with this idea. The brand is called 𝐷. What was the origin story and what made you decide, hey, I want to join that minority group of people who are making handbags?
Yeah, that's actually interesting because I still get that question a lot. So this was back in 2014. I was still finishing up with my business school. I was doing my MBA. And while everybody was looking for corporate jobs, I decided back then that that's not my cup of tea. And I really wanted to do something of my own, but in in the fashion and design and technology and manufacturing space. But I just couldn't figure out what it was and what it should be.
Did you have any experience in that at all? Or it was hey, let me, while I'm becoming an expert in business, let me just become a handbag designer, because that's what I did. And it made no sense. And there was no rhyme or reason. It was I got an idea for a handbag. I'm hey, while I'm learning statistics at a master's level, I should become a handbag designer. That makes sense.
Yeah, I believe that was it, because I was actually... That was the time where everything was tech related and there were all these inspiring stories coming up. Everybody is reading about Steve Jobs and, how he started his journey and that relentless ambition and motivation that if you want to do something, you can achieve it. If you have, that kind of ambition in you. So that was the motivation behind. And since I really wanted to work in the fashion and the design space, so I was I don't want to make clothes because that's something that everybody else is doing. So the next best thing that we could do probably, based on what I find in the region that I exist in is probably let's make handbags, because leather was one of the reasons that why I got into it, having a butterfly of Pakistan. It's one of the largest exporters in the world for leather. So I was hey, nobody, why is it that, there's so much of this raw material being produced here, but nobody has ever gotten value addition in this?
So you had this idea, you were inspired in business school. Do you have, prior to getting your MBA, had you had any experience in fashion, family, anything, manufacturing, nothing? Or this was hey ho, I'm in a country that does manufacturing, that has that potential, but I have never heard of a handbag brand actually being manufactured in Pakistan. So I might as well be the first.
Yeah, so that was the idea. But I believe that it was also because in Pakistan, we're still a lot, women especially, they still get their clothes stitched themselves. So so everybody has an access to the tailor. So we've seen that thing happening ever since, since childhood, that we used to source our own fabric and just walk to the tailor and ask them to stitch, whatever we want. So in a way, like everybody is a designer in their own household. So it's like, how if clothes are made like that, how difficult would a handbag be? So
Right.
but little I knew because it's a completely different science altogether. How the construction is done, how the material behaves, like what components go into it. So it was like a whole, I would say, like learning process and the journey that I just went on. And I believe that it was kind of it worked in my favor because I did not have any preconceived notions. So it was like, whatever you could think of, you were like, okay, we'll make it work.
The crazy thing about not knowing anything about anything while you're diving in is that the ignorance and naivete works in your best interest and works in your favor because it's like, hey, no one else is doing it. I should be the first. And then little by little, you realize, wow, the fact that nobody is doing it is equivalent to significant barriers to entry because the country is not set up to do what you want to do, right? Like you said that there were tailors wherever you went, but meanwhile, nobody was making handbags, which is interesting because handbags are size agnostic and apparel is all about sizing, which to me is always the dumbest thing you can get into because, more wastage, more time passing, and therefore the products go bad. It's out of season, out of trend, where a handbag, you run into you have less blocks because a bag can be seasonal or perceived seasonal, especially coming from a smaller brand.
Yes.
So about the fact how going into handbags while apparel was so popular.
So I was thinking like, 10, 12 years ago, ready to wear in Pakistan was still like very new, nascent concept. Everybody was like getting clothes stitched according to their sizes and everything. So which is probably why that industry was much developed. But with handbags, the thing was like we do have skilled labor, but it's not in that much abundance as we see in the textile sector, as we see in the clothing sector. So probably, that was, one of the barriers to entry, then access to raw material. Like you can't source leather in smaller quantities. Even if you do, then, getting the metallic hardware source locally is very difficult. You have to import that. So like there's a lot that goes into it. But I believe again, naivety or ambition or motivation to do it. I just slow and steady on my own pace. I just kept on building on it.
So when you started with this mission of keeping everything domestic to you, that is, were you realizing, especially not knowing anything about starting a brand, let alone a handbag brand, did you have notions that, okay, it's going to be leather or it's going to be textiles as a result of what I have access to? Because logically, that would have made more sense, right? To go into it with more fabric-based, textile-based notions as a result of what you have access to, or you were like, let me just make my life so difficult where I'm going to have leather, I want to have metallics, I want to have special hardware where you'd eventually have to outsource probably a good chunk of it, at least to start.
Yeah. So like I said, probably you could call it naivety. But then again, for me, the handbag was always leather. And I do, because I was coming from more of a consumer point of view, because I had been a consumer, I had been a customer. So I was like, it has to be leather. Or why do I go for buying handbags? There has to be something unique about it. Like if you're a new brand starting and if you don't have that build legacy or that brand value created for yourself yet, then why would somebody want to buy your brand? So maybe on that front, we have to think of how unique we can be. Like who do we resonate with? Maybe it has to be something very different, something that more the girls who like to experiment with their own style would want to go ahead with. That was all the thought process that went into taking all of these decisions. But and that was also the point, we have this amazing raw material available to us, and why don't we do value addition into it? And that was also probably because, the people who have been managing all this raw material maybe have been always looking at it from a very manufacturer's point of view and perspective, and not from a brand's perspective, that something can be made out of it or how we can use it. They have just been suppliers for the rest of the world. It was a lot of things going on. like I said, like I was studying business, I was studying marketing. So I was also thinking things from the brand point of view.
Right. We have another designer that I had spoken to who was from Mexico. And, the stories of people who come from countries that actually have production, there's a lot of similarities where she actually went to a factory and had to explain to them that let's do handbags, let's not do shoes, let's not do what you're already doing. And I'm assuming you being a woman and moving to these factories where it was predominantly men and you know nothing about it, you have nothing to show for it, and you're going into this very male-dominated, family-run brand business livelihood. Yes. So for you to go up against and being like, hey guys, Hirra here, I've got this great idea. I'm in business school. Let's do handbags. I'm sure there was some pushback where they were going to charge you extra just even for the sampling alone.
They do. Yes, they did. Like initially, like I had so many rejections from some bigger setups. They did not. What they do is they do one setup iteration of sampling for you. And I think the next one, they're like, oh, okay, give us an order for 1,000 pieces first, and then we will make for you. And
you were like, well, I really can't. So let's see what we can do.
So that's when I moved from like bigger setups to these very, craft-based, right, family-owned little workshops where, these people had the craft, they had the skills to make something, but, it wasn't refined because they have not been exposed to that kind of sophisticated design or quality. So it was more like a, learning process where we were working as collaborators and where I was bringing in my exposure and my knowledge of, how the brand works, how the design works. And they were bringing in their knowledge and expertise of how, the craft works with leather.
Were you having to bring in bags of other brands, like with a sample request? And a lot of people, new designers actually think that they shouldn't be doing it this way, but you really should, where you take screenshots of other established bags and brands and like, I want a handle like this. I want a top stitch like that. I want a zipper puller like this. Because you were dealing with people who had never, ever dealt with this before, were you having to bring in physical bags and saying, I want the handle like this. I want the interior like that. I want leather straps like this, like bringing in a bag.
Yeah, of like, so I concluded that, they were not able to perceive the concepts. Like if you have a certain concept in your mind and you make a sketch out of it and you are trying to communicate that. So they, at first, like there was a communication barrier in understanding that. So what we came up with was that we made life-size paper models, and we did like a lot of visual aid in terms of if you want to show them how the handle should be, maybe make it out of clay or some other material just to show them how that, like, life-size 3D prototyping and models to explain them. And yes, like, definitely looking out for references like that, especially in terms of, when they say that something cannot be done, but you're like, hello, we have seen this being done. And so everybody can do it. Why can't you do it? So let's just figure it out. So yeah, I think that's just part of the research and figuring out how the developments work.
Kate Spade, and I held on to this article from a billion years ago that Kate Spade, when she did her handbags, she did them out of construction paper. So when I did mine, that's what I did. I went to a bead shop. I glued on the beads. I, was taking this, it's in the beginning of my book, actually, these sad little glued, sticky mock-ups that in like a little plastic bag that... So unsophisticated. And every time I took it out, it would like stick to the bag. I'm like, well, this is the brand I want to launch coming out of this, 30-cent plastic bag. That's so interesting to say that you were actually doing life-size models. So at least they could understand the specs and dimension.
Yes. And then like it just became like, the part of the process. So even now when we come up with a new design, a new form, so they ask for the 3D model, like a paper model. They just say like, you give us the paper model and then we'll figure out the patterns, we'll work around it. So we just found that our communication language that we came up with, I would say that, where we both of us meet at the center point where, we can understand each other.
Is that where the name Warp came in? Everything was warped to figure it out.
No, Warp. Yeah, since Warp actually came in with because I wanted to do something new, something that is futuristic, something that is contemporary, but built on what already exists. So even with like every handbag that we have come up with is based on the idea that we're trying to build on an already existing shape. Because if we want to do, like I felt that, as a consumer, something completely new and completely unique is put in front of me, I might be a little hesitant in adopting it, as opposed to something that is derived from, what already exists. So that's where the name warp came from.
I always loved
it in our own way.
No, I got to tell you, I've always loved the name of your brand. It's my favorite function on Photoshop.
Of course.
Yeah, to someone who is a basic bitch on Photoshop, it's like, oh, look, warp. I can pull it around. Who knew? Go figure.
It's funny because half the time we're just called wrap, and we have to correct people that it's warp. It's not wrap. I think it's just your brain, because people just read
the letters
and go
process.
So they just like wrap, like warp.
If you ever wanted to start a handbag line and didn't know where to start, this is for you.
Living proof that independent designers can make it big.
Absolutely. Blumenthal is one prime example.
If you had dreams of becoming a handbag designer and didn't know where to start, this is for you. If you have a handbag brand and are in need of strategy and direction, this is for you. I'm Emily Blumenthal, handbag fairy godmother and handbag designer expert, and this is Handbag Designer 101, the masterclass. Over the next 10 classes, I will break down everything you need to know how to make, market, and manufacture a handbag. Broken down for you that you'll not only skip steps in that handbag building process, but also save money in that learning curve. For the past 20 years, I've been teaching at the top fashion universities in New York City, created the Handbag Awards, and also the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. I'm going to show you like I have countless brands, from sketch to sample to shelf, whether you're just starting out and don't know where to begin, or even if you have a handbag line and just need some strategic direction, the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass is just for you. So let's get started, and you will be the creator of the next it bag. Join me, Emily Blumenthal, with the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass. Let me ask you though, because I'm curious, India has a lot of production, and all the other countries around have handbag, like the Philippines has handbag production. There's now countries in Africa that are really popular. Have there been, because I'm totally unfamiliar and pardon my ignorance, are there other brands, handbag brands that have, I know there have been via the Handbag Awards I've seen, but none of whom have been very, very, big. Are there other handbag brands that come from Pakistan, and are you contemporaries with them?
Not really. I really set myself up for a challenge here. But no, I think Warp is first up this kind of brand to emerge out of Pakistan. We do have like one or two legacy manufactured brands, more like, who are not known for their design or aesthetics as per se, but more like their craftsmanship and they're like legacy manufacturing brands, because they had their canneries and they had their setups, and, this was just like a byproduct of it. But yeah, other than that, I can't think of any, but like now a lot of people are jumping into it, but then again, it's like, XYZ versions of handbags.
Right. Totally. Look, you're an early adopter. There's your MBA word right there. Go you. So, but that's wild. It's fascinating that you come from a country that is known for, local production, local manufacturing, most likely only servicing the local country itself. Pakistan is massive, right? And there's so much production that comes out, but not one handbag brand. So it's to that point, I know there's been a lot of press on you, and I'm thrilled to see that you had the wherewithal to say, hey, if I'm going to be a one of one, let me take advantage of it, because not only am I the first, because I always say, if you're launching a brand, you have to be the first, the fastest, and the best. Yeah. And this gave you an opportunity, theoretically, to be all three and have the media cover you for that.
Yeah. So, like I say, that it's always a first mover advantage and disadvantage.
Right.
For us, the good thing is that we have no comparisons. Like, we're not compared against anybody. Nobody has any, standards or benchmarks for us. So it's like an open playing field. But at the same time, I do feel like, we have sort of like set the course for other people to come into the industry, because when I started off, I did not have any precedent to look up to. Like, let's say if I want to start a clothing brand today, I have so many examples like the
You don't want to though.
Yes. No, I think anything with human beings that makes it complicated. Like you mentioned, like the sizing and all of that. So, and plus I feel like handbags and accessories like jewelry is much more inclusive in terms of fashion, adaptable to everybody. Like our handbags are being bought in Middle East and North America and, East Asian countries. So it's like, it's more inclusive in terms of it, more universal.
To that point, I wanted to actually talk to you about that. Coming from a country that isn't well known for something like this, it must have been a challenge. I don't want to say struggle because I don't like that word, but it must have been a challenge to say, okay, I'm all the way here. Nobody knows I exist. Nobody knows what I'm making exist. Nobody knows that the country where I'm making it exists.
What?
How did you go about getting your bags out there for people to know to even buy, and that they were shipping from Pakistan, and like to make even the shipping amenable, that you probably have to eat the cost to get people to buy from a D2C level?
Yeah, so I had to invest a lot in brand building and brand storytelling in that way. Like, I think when you're starting off as a brand, it's not easy for you to go and participate in trade shows and, put yourself out there with media coverage and everything. But I thought that, that's important because it's not like any other manufacturer. We don't want to be a manufacturer. I want to build a brand. Like I want to tell the story of this part of the world. So from the very beginning, I have been taking part in these trade shows and, trying to tell, and the craftsmanship is as good as you could find in any other part of the world, though, in terms of material and in terms of how we're trying to keep everything local. And so all of that has been, putting together little pieces of puzzle where it was like media coverage as well, working with PR, working with trying to get influencers on board. So like I said, were you
looking to South Asian influencers because you would think they were lower hanging fruit, just out of principle, just out of curiosity?
Also, we are doing it now. The interesting thing was that somehow we have been lucky in that way that, people have been very responsive to the brand. It's kind of unique. Thing that, people like it. And when they hear about, where it's coming from, they get more intrigued. Also because, maybe some people don't know, have limited knowledge about the region, or they have, heard about some other brand or some other things going on. So yeah, I think the response has been great in that way. And we do have reached out to influencers from all parts of, all ethnicities everywhere. So,
well, you were saying that you tried working with big factories and they didn't know what to do with you. And it was probably, all for the best that it didn't work out. Are you still working with these smaller artisan shops or smaller artisan mini factories? And do you have more than one just to hedge your production?
So we have actually set up our own production facility now.
Wow.
Yes, it was since last month. And the idea was
new.
It's very new and also challenging. And I realized that if you want to scale and also produce because the kind of work that we do and the kind of quality and everything that we need, we actually have to bring in these people and they have to unlearn what they know already. And then learn, what is required of them. Because we do have a big manufacturing industry here. It's both like shoes and handbags and jackets, and all of that is exported. But that's mainly for big department stores and things like that.
Right.
Not for, yeah. So for that, I felt that, we need a facility where we can bring in people and we can train them according to what is required for them. And maybe in few months, we want to provide those services to the other people as well, because I felt that that's a challenge that I faced when I was entering into this field. So if I have faced that way, maybe we can help the other people or the designers coming into the industry as well who need this help, because I wouldn't want that, someone else also just drops the idea of doing it just because some big manufacturer was not willing to do work on their concepts because they're not used to working with in that way. So yeah, we're at a facility now.
Of the people that you have working at this facility, are they the artisans that you had, the family run ones from before that you've just moved them into your facility under your umbrella?
Yes, so it's more like a partnership thing. It's more like it's in partnership with them. So we were like, let's grow together. Like
That's
we
amazing.
have been, yes. And also the fact that I really wanted to bring in more women into our workforce, provide them with like safe working environment where they can learn and, earn their livelihood in a dignified manner. And plus women workers are amazing. Like they can multitask and they are very meticulous with their hands.
My God. We were just talking about the word multitask here. That is so funny with my almost 7-year-old. And he kept saying, what's multitasking? What's multitasking? And I said, oh, it's something that mommies do the best and women do the best. And my husband walked by. He's like, that's not true. And I just kind of nodded my head. But oh my God, it's so true. No disrespect to any male or someone who identifies as male who can multitask, but there's no one who can do it better than we can. I'm so sorry, but it's true.
It's like, they're very much organized and very meticulous with the work and the attention to detail, and they really put in their heart and soul into what they're doing. It's it's inbuilt that they have to perform well. I don't know if it's like years and years of evolution of, proving themselves or something, but
do you think, and this is a question, because this is a twofold question, in terms of pricing, because now with your own facility, and obviously you're the one who's setting the bar in terms of pricing, but typically what is your MOQ? What's your minimum quantity for your own production? Are you doing runs of 1,000 pieces yet? Or is it 500 pieces? I think that will help you to understand.
So it's on rolling basis at the moment, because initially I also do believe in not having a lot of wastage. Yeah, so it's more like as per need. So that was the idea that, we bring in more people as per the need, and we keep on increasing our capacity according to it. So if our, requirements keep increasing, we just keep increasing our production levels. And that was the idea of setting up my own thing so that, we can scale accordingly. So yeah, we can do, just in terms of infrastructure, we have the facility to be able to produce 500,000 pieces in a month. But then again, that depends on, what the demand is like at the moment and at what pace we want to grow. I don't believe in moving really fast and trying to, do shortcuts and everything. I'm I'm good with my own pace as far as, we can manage it. We're able to manage it.
This is so interesting. I'm so happy selfishly that I'm doing this podcast because I get to talk to all of my designers. I consider someone like you part of our community. And, I stand by that. You're only as good as the community you're part of. And if you don't support that community, then what is the point in doing what you're doing, right? Especially with what we do, because the community handbags are so oversaturated that we have to kind of it was logical for you to create a production facility because you know what you went through. We just spoke to a designer who was in Morocco who did the same thing, who realized, wow, the local population, they can create beautiful bags. They have access, da-da-da-da. Are you making your own hardware too, or are you outsourcing that? Just out of curiosity.
At the moment, we are actually outsourcing the metallic hardware. We import that. But we have recently started working on sampling with brass, little clutches, along with, leather. So that's something that's in the pipeline. And because also for the same reason, we do have a lot of brass work happening in Pakistan, but that's mostly for, decorative items and things like that, household items. And also a lot of jewelry as well.
Is your platform now set up for designers to reach out to you? And, I get these requests all the time. I mean, all the time. Where can I produce my bags? How do I produce my bags? Who can I reach out to? And I'm always reluctant to connect these designers, much like you are now being on the receiving end, with factories and production who have never had the experience of working with a sample maker. I always say, in my opinion, set aside that money, make the samples locally. You're going to need money anyway to go into production, to start a brand, start a business, but work with a local sample maker. They may rob you blind, but at least you'll know locally what they're doing, why they're doing it, understanding structurally, hopefully that sample maker will explain, this does not make sense. The bag is too heavy, or the interior is too dark, or the closure is too complicated. They may or may not. A lot of times they don't, because it's more money for them to have them coming over and over. And I'm sure you don't want to work with someone who doesn't necessarily have orders against, the sample making process. That said, you want to be the one who connects with the designer and works with them to help grow their brand and so forth. So is there an opportunity to work with you to go into production and so forth? And what does that look like?
Yes.
How would that be?
Yeah, so that's the plan. Like, we want to start doing that by end of this year. So like, starting 2024, going to reach out to people that we can produce. But that was like also one of the, I spoke to a lot of local brands, or also like, the fashion brands also venturing into accessories, and they want to get bags made now. So they've been reaching out to us for this, and they had the same problems and issues that, we faced initially, because the thing is that, it's not especially for a fast fashion brand or somebody like who wants to create, or, working at a very large scale, and they want to have like 15, 20 designs every season. So like, we can't just communicate with the craftsman community. Like, we just want the designs, give them the designs, and they do everything. Then again, like I said that, it's not, since they have limited exposure, they can't source material for them. They can't, put everything together in the way they want. So that's where we want to come in between as like the middleman, so that, we can help other brands do their job. Yeah, which is actually our job. So yeah,
that's amazing. Listen, Hirra, this is spectacular. We'll have to discuss this further because, again, I get so many requests from designers like, okay, I have a brand. Okay, I have a dream. And it's like, okay, get your act together, then come back to me, because I always say, do your homework, do your research, understand your customers' wants, needs, what they have for breakfast, what they have for lunch. Where do they live? Do they drive? Is it a warm climate? Like, and if you're selling to people internationally, like, you always need to know what their needs and wants are, and that kind of money that they'll set aside to spend on a brand that no one's ever heard of, because people will save for a label. Buying from a brand like yours or anybody else is much more of an emotional purchase, where they see your story, they see you, they see the bag, and it's a lot more, the acquisition cost to gain that customer is much higher. That said, that 80-20 of 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers will be much higher because they're now invested in you. Yeah. So I am so happy that you were part of this. You look like you have one more thing you want to add, because I see it.
No, again, like, I just think that what you said right now is probably the entire course of 5-6 years that I went through, figuring out what the customer is, where are we selling, what the climate is like, what are the daily habits, if we're designing a bag for day to night, how it should be, whether it should be comfortable for day, and gives you the whole day, you can carry it the whole day. So all of those things go into it, and you understand all of those so it's like a throughout a journey sort of learning. You cannot know those things when you start. It's something that you learn on the way, and that's how it has been for us as well.
Wow. Well, Hirra, this has been absolutely incredible. How can people find you, follow you, reach out to you? Please share.
So our Instagram handle, Warp Online. It's WWRP online. And our website is warp-online.com. And so they can reach out to us through these two platforms. They can write to us. Our email address is, there's a form on the website and email address given, so they can like reach out to us or just drop us a direct message. And we're here.
This is amazing. Hirra from Warp, thank you so much. We'll definitely be in touch to learn more, and may have to have you back to talk about how this production's going, because I totally want to know more.
We'll be happy. And I'm so glad to have this conversation with you finally.
Yeah. Again, selfishly, and whomever listens, I am so happy we were finally able to chat and connect and actually see each other face to face. It means so much to share these stories, especially your journey and like what you've been through, because people can learn so much and then get the opportunity to reap the benefits of your blood, sweat, and handbag tears.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Hirra, thank you for being part of the Handbag Designer 101 podcast, and we will be staying tuned. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review, and follow us on every single platform at Handbag Designer. Thanks so much. See you next time.